Today, we're sitting down with a unique and insightful voice from the road, a modern nomad and YouTube travel vlogger who's been documenting his journey through cities, cultures, and inner landscapes across the world. What makes his story special isn't just the places he visits, but the way he captures human moments, raw reflections, and the tension between adventure and vulnerability. Currently living in Israel, he finds himself at the crossroads of one of the most ancient regions in the world and one of the most geopolitically charged. As tensions with Iran escalate following recent bombings, he continues to observe, film, and reflect from ground level, offering a rare lens into everyday life during extraordinary times. In this conversation, I will explore how he got started, the challenges and meaning behind the nomadic life, his experiences in Israel, and what it means to be a storyteller when the world is on edge. He will also give us a glimpse into what is actually going on with Israel and Iran, and what's going on with Gaza as well. So stay tuned. Honored to be with such a very unique guest, Alec Pollard. He is not only a travel vlogger, almost traveling all over the world, which some of the videos are actually hilarious and very, very interesting. But another really unique moment is he is actually in Israel right now as we are speaking. He's going to tell us more about that. He's actually currently in a bunker due to missiles coming in from Iran, and he's going to tell us all about it. He's been there for a while now. So I am actually so appreciative to have Alec on the podcast today. And my viewers, I'm sure you will get some really good insight on not only what's going on with Israel and Iran, but also being a travel vlogger, geopolitics, what is going on, how can we be positive in such a negative time. So Alec, the insightful nomad, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good considering the circumstances. Thank you very much for the kind introduction.
Honestly, I can only imagine what you're going through. So honestly, thank you for being here with me today.
Yeah. Just before, we actually had to delay the interview a little bit because we were scheduled for a certain time. And then I got this alert on my phone that the missiles will be incoming. So we went down into the bunker in the building. Yeah. So this is an apartment building I'm in. And there's a bunker or like a safe room or shelter, call what you want, on the ground floor. So went down there. All the neighbors are there. The whole building's inside. Get to meet the neighbors a little bit in this age where everyone's on their phones. It's a bit of a meetup over there. And luckily, one of the neighbors installed some Wi-Fi. So I was able to kind of be connected. And yeah, now I'm back out of the bunker for now, at least. And everyone's safe and sound. So in that sense, it's good. And I'm good. And really, really great to be here with you.
I am so happy to hear that because within a matter of less than a couple of weeks, we went from, Israel and Gaza to now Israel and Iran. And the rest of the world, we have the G7 coming up. We have all these big leader meetings coming up. So let's see what they come to a conclusion, if there is a conclusion. But before we get into all this serious stuff, Alec, tell us more about yourself. What inspired you to travel the world? Just drop everything, pick up a camera, travel the world, and giving us these deep gems of locations and paths that not the average person goes to. So can you tell us more about yourself, please?
Yeah, so the travel vlogging thing, how did that all come about? Well, I grew up in Israel, and before I was vlogging, for over 5 years, I worked in the news in Israel, which can be very challenging because right now we're in quite extraordinary circumstances, but also before that, all the time there's something that's going on here. So I worked at a news channel, an English language news channel in Israel. So it was like not a sort of local media, but really a media that's more geared for outsiders trying to understand what's going on here and the Middle East. And I have a much better English than a lot of people here because I was born in the US. I've been in Israel since I'm 6 years old. So I grew up in Israel and my whole family is here and all that. But I speak good English, as you can hear, with a nice American accent. And that kind of, and I'm also fluent in Hebrew. So I have that ability to, translate and do all the stuff. And I worked for 5.5 years in a TV channel. I was a producer at the beginning, and then I was a correspondent, and I was a news anchor also. So, I had my suit and all that, and looking all serious and everything. And yeah, and then you find me going around the world vlogging, which is a different thing, but it is kind of related also to broadcast journalism. And well, how did it come about? I did always love to travel. Did a lot of traveling before I was a vlogger. Was a bit tired of my job in the news. Maybe a bit disillusioned a little bit also with the mainstream media in some ways, which maybe we can get into. But I'm sure a lot of people can connect with that because there's generally a lot of skepticism with the media, and it's also being challenged now by things like Twitter, Insta,
It's hard to trust them,
YouTubers.
the legacy networks, especially when you have, people like yourself who are right there in the moment and can report the news, compared to waiting till 6 o'clock or 11 o'clock for the late night news. But you're absolutely correct.
Look, there's a lot of limitations in the media. There's a lot of great people in the media I know personally, and people try to do their best. And I don't think it's as much sort of intentional manipulation, but more just things like circumstances, budgets, all kinds of limitations you have, for example, of getting news out of countries where you're not allowed to freely report, a lot of things like that. And also just competition with individual creators and Twitter, where speed is overtaking accuracy. Because of that. So just the landscape is constantly changing. That's the bottom line. So there was a bit of that, and also just fatigue from covering. I covered in Israel 5 elections that we had. We had this chaos period where we had 5 elections, covered multiple wars with Gaza, with Hamas, covered a lot of things that can get very exhausting. And there was one point where I had a bit of vacation. I did some traveling actually in Bali and Indonesia, and was watching some YouTube travel vlogs and everything. And I saw those vlogs. And while I myself also was doing the travel, I was like, wow, I can make an amazing vlog from this place that I'm traveling right now. So many great stories. I had rented a motorbike, and this would be amazing content. Amazing content. This is like my creator brain as a journalist that was coming out a little bit. And I saw some of the vlogs that other people were making, and some of them really weren't that good and still got pretty viral views. So I just thought to myself, wow, I can make much better videos than what a lot of these people are making with my background in doing TV reports and filming and editing and narrating and all that. And that's kind of when the bug got in my head. I already knew that I wanted to leave where I was working. And, the option was maybe go work for another channel or just find some other job. And I just thought to myself, you know what? You have your whole life to work in an office if things don't work out. Go do half a year, see how it goes. And maximum, you can always come back and go back to doing what you were doing before. So I had to kind of learn how some things work. My first camera was a GoPro, which is an action camera that probably a lot of you know. It actually turns out, now that I have more experience with action cameras, that it's probably not the best vlogging camera, but it doesn't have particularly good sound quality. It doesn't do very well in the dark. So it has a very specific use, more for like if you're on a ski trip and you want to film that action scene and things like that. But for vlogging, it's probably not as good. But that I learned along the way. Just learned how to film in this different environment where I don't have a cameraman with me. How to catch those spontaneous interactions, which is really one of the things that's most exciting about watching the travel vlogs. And sort of started to learn how to film, how to create that story, how to edit, because I had very basic editing knowledge before, and I really improved my editing along the way. And then, the journey just kind of snowballed from there, going to different countries, telling different stories. And I really, I loved it. Sorry, I just got a message here. If you heard that sound, wait a second. All right, I'm back with you. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how to stop that stuff from coming in. Anyway, so the vlogging, it was really cool for me and great, and I really enjoyed the freedom that I had. I really enjoyed creating something that belongs to me and not working for another network. And also, as someone who worked as a journalist, one of the things I really loved about vlogging is that you get this much more spontaneous experience. There's a reason now where a lot of people are calling some vloggers as the best journalists as opposed to the media. Now, I'm not sure I agree with that. And there are some problems with calling the average vlogger a journalist, which we can get into. But one thing is for sure, when you're going around with a big camera on the shoulder like that with a cameraman and a big microphone, it's very intimidating. It completely changes the situation that you're in. And the people, when they see that, they realize like they're on camera and whatever, and sometimes they won't talk to you, or they'll talk to you in a completely different way. There's something about going around with that little camera where you don't belong to anyone, when you're just a YouTuber. Some people don't even notice you have the camera. You're able to capture these very real, unique moments as a vlogger that you would never be able to capture as a journalist. And I know, because I was a journalist before, and I know the two different formats. And that was something that really excited me. Like, I love going into those situations and trying to kind of like capture those moments. That's something that's kind of very, very cool about the vlogging. And it kind of becomes like an adrenaline junkie kind of thing, where you want to capture that super interesting, unique thing that you cannot recreate planned. Like, it's a spontaneous moment where you're searching for those moments that could, potentially become viral in your video. So I've really
It's so,
enjoyed.
it's such a freedom that you get. I can tell it. You're so passionate. It's I'm sure when you were a journalist, you had to wear a suit and tie. You're in kind of an office, indoors all the time. But now that you've kind of broken off and branched off on your own, you're outside meeting curious people. And also that point about the camera, it really is intimidating having a big camera and a big microphone in front of you when
Absolutely.
you can just have a little mini, microphone, and your friend or even yourself just holding an iPhone, which is small anyway. And that is the evolution, I would say, of not only journalism, but also just getting to the news. It's faster. It's hopefully more accurate at times. But then again, we do have AI that's kind of distorting
Yeah.
so many things. So before you started your journey, what was the biggest fear? Because I know for many people, leaving their job might be the biggest fear, or telling their mom, "Hey, mom, I'm a YouTuber now." That could be the biggest fear. But what was your biggest fear before starting this journey?
Well, what you mentioned, I don't know if it was my biggest fear, but it was definitely my biggest obstacle, because my family tried to convince me out of it to a certain extent, because they said, all right, what are you going to be your career prospects after if it doesn't work? Or even if it does work, and, what are you going to be traveling forever? And I'm also not that young. I actually just had my 37th birthday a few days ago.
Happy
So,
birthday. Happy belated.
yeah, definitely belated. And yeah, that's also a thing where, I had that conversation with my mom, for example, and she's like, look, you're 35, you're not 25. What are you going to do afterwards? And then, so there was a bit of that. But actually, like, surprisingly, I didn't feel that concerned or scared. I was maybe a bit scared of some of the locations that I went to and beforehand, and what it would be like, which I'm sure we're going to get into in a moment. But as far as just kind of leaving it all behind and just going on this travel journey, I think I wasn't as scared as you would expect to be. Maybe because I had done a lot of solo traveling before, because I'd been in a lot of tough situations in Israel as a reporter before. I was actually kind of more excited than scared. I was excited at the possibilities that lay ahead, the adventures I was going to have, and the learning, like constantly like trying to improve. And this, I was more excited than scared, for sure.
Well, that's good to hear, because some people taking that jump or taking that leap can be very, very terrifying. But you've already been through war zones. You've already dealt with so many things that the average person hasn't. So I'm guessing vlogging is the easy part, the exciting part, something new and refreshing in your life. And so your channel has actually exploded so much in the past couple of years because you do have awesome, awesome videos, the content itself, where you go. How was it like growing your YouTube channel? What like how much determination did it take? I'm doing this. I'm going all in.
Look, it's a lot of hard work. Um, I appreciate the this language of like the channel exploding and everything. I mean, I did have quite a bit of very good success, but I'm still not a huge channel. I don't rake in large amounts of money like the biggest vloggers or the biggest YouTubers do. So I don't know if I really made it with the channel yet, at least, and I'm still figuring some of that stuff out. But I think I definitely had a lot of big success. I have one video that's got over 1 million views, and others with hundreds of thousands of views, some of them. So I think I had some pretty good success. I think some of the people who watched my channel were really impressed. So it wasn't just cheap content that gets a lot of views and then people kind of forget who you are, but rather I had people who kind of stayed with me and really appreciated what I did. YouTube is tough. YouTube is tough. It's a roller coaster. You think you have that breakthrough video or moment that from there you're just going to go up, and that doesn't happen. It kind of goes it goes like this, right? It goes in waves, or you have an up and then a down and an up and then a down. And you have to keep making the videos, and you have to keep coming up with the ideas. And when you're a traveler, you have to keep pushing and moving forward and moving to new places. I'd say it's very, very difficult, much more difficult than it looks from the outside, because there tends to be an impression of travel vloggers that it's just, ooh, you get to travel and make videos and it's so much fun, but it can be stressful, and you have to deal with a lot because you get to a new place. Okay, now you have to find a new accommodation, you have to find new supermarket with food, you have to deal with visas, you have to deal with travel plans, you have to deal with, and just that thing that you always get to a new place and you're only spending a short amount of time there is tough. Like, you want a coffee shop to work, you probably have next to your home a nice coffee shop where you work, and then each time you have to find that new place all the time. It's like you have to, things that are taken care of in your life in other cases, you have to start from
Always
scratch
on the
every time like
go.
that. Yeah, start from where you go.
And you know what?
So
It's worth it, I think. I think what you've done and accomplished so far, I know your channel is going to boom even more, but what you've done so far, in my personal opinion, is amazing. Your series of just the Ethiopia series, personally, that's how I found your channel, and I'm going to have that link in the description box as well. The Ethiopia series, it gave a different insight. Especially when it came to the climbing of the mountain up to I believe it was Ethiopian church, and you being a Jewish person as well, and Ethiopia having a Jewish population, a pretty Orthodox, I would say Orthodox maybe, population, and that interaction I thought was amazing. Can you tell us more about the experience that you had in Ethiopia?
yeah, Ethiopia was really cool. It's one of the countries that most interested me to go to. It was my first place that I traveled in, sub-Saharan Africa. Let's call it that way, because I had been in North Africa before, in Egypt and Morocco, but that's, it's kind of different. That's more sort of like the Arab Muslim world, whereas, Ethiopia, it's already something else, So definitely it was something new going to Ethiopia, and it's a very, very interesting country with an insane, very ancient history. And I'm a big history buff, and it's something that's really guided my videos very much. In a lot of my videos, I talk about history. I try to go to important sites. I try to kind of like tell the story of the country as I go through it, which I feel like a lot of bloggers are not doing nowadays. They're just going, oh, the biggest market, the most dangerous neighborhood, something with some attractive girl in the thumbnail, or
They're
this
looking
like
for the clickbait.
yeah, the scams. Like there's a lot of stuff that they don't even tell you that much about the country itself when they go. And for me, it's like very important to tell a story of the country as well. So Ethiopia has a super interesting history, and also that Jewish angle for sure. I mean, look, I grew up in Israel. We have Ethiopian Jews in Israel. Many of them also served with me, like in the military and things like that. And you hear stories about Ethiopia, but you don't really know that much about it. A lot of those Ethiopians in Israel that I knew had not been to Ethiopia themselves, right? Their parents came from Ethiopia. So, now if I meet an Ethiopian Jew here in Israel, like probably I've been to Ethiopia, he hasn't been. So that's kind of a funny thing. But yeah, it's definitely a country that here in Israel is, let's say, in the mind's eye more than other countries in Africa. Like, unfortunately, not just in Israel, but a lot of people couldn't name a lot of the countries in Africa besides the major ones like, Kenya, South Africa, whatever. But there's all these countries that I started to discover geography, places like Malawi and, Equatorial Guinea and Botswana. Like, these are places that the average
Yeah.
person doesn't know about at all. But everyone knows about Ethiopia. And in Israel, definitely everyone knows about Ethiopia. And yeah, I mean, look, I landed in Addis Ababa. Very, very cool, by the way, that I got in a taxi with a guy, and I hear him speaking in Amharic, which is the language that they speak over there in Ethiopia. And I hear him like naming cities in Israel. He says something like, I don't know how to do an impersonation of Amharic language, but no, it's like this high tone, right? And then I hear like Ashkelon and Ashdod, which is like these cities in Israel, and not even central cities, not Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, whatever. And I'm like, well, what's going on over there? Do you have family in Israel or something like that? And he's like, oh yeah, I have, I'm a part Jewish and whatever and all that. It was just like my taxi driver that I met in Addis Ababa. So that was straight away, was super cool. And then later on also, met some of the Jewish community through a contact that I had and all that. Yeah, definitely Ethiopia was a really interesting, fascinating country to go to that I felt like I had some type of personal connection to. In a strange way, maybe it may sound, but like I felt, kind of almost at I wouldn't say I felt at home, but I felt like,
There is
I don't
that
know.
spiritual connection, and also kind of that, hey, we have relatabilities, right? We speak
Yeah,
similar
yeah.
languages, we eat similar foods.
Right.
Um,
Amharic is a Semitic language, by the way.
yeah,
It's a
it's
Semitic language,
similar
so
to
they're related.
Hebrew.
It's related. I speak some Arabic as well. So, I was doing that, looking at that triangle of, for example, the numbers 1 to 10 in Hebrew, Arabic, and Amharic and things. It was cool to also like try to export the language a little bit. But it was just a very very cool place to go to. And then regarding the monastery, that's a story in itself because what happened was that I wanted when I was there in Ethiopia, and still there's a civil war going on. I don't know if everybody knows about this. There was a big civil war between the central government in Ethiopia and the region called Tigray, which is in northern Ethiopia. And that conflict was a deadly one that went on for several years. A lot of people were killed. And that conflict is now over. Some type of ceasefire was signed where kind of, let's say the Tigrayans kind of lost, basically. They were also attacked by Eritrea, which sort of sided with Ethiopia, which is a bit strange because Eritrea and Ethiopia used to be in a war themselves. So there's a lot of complex things going on here. But basically, Tigray kind of sided, kind of defeated ceasefire deal. And I thought that because of that, that basically the situation in Ethiopia is okay. What does it turn out? It turns out that when I arrived in Ethiopia, one of the groups that was fighting with the central Ethiopian government earlier on against the Tigrayans didn't want to give up all their weapons that they had in that war, and now they are in a conflict with the central government because you have a lot of kind of like sort of some different ethnic groups somewhat in Ethiopia and different regions. And I can't claim to be the biggest expert, but in general, in a lot of these big African countries, you tend to have a lot of different groups, ethnic groups or tribes that have kind of, I don't know if separate identities, but they certainly don't always see eye to eye, particularly. And you might have some type of central government sitting in the capital that not everybody's happy with. So that's what happened in the case of that Tigray region, and that's what happened now in the Amhara region. The region called Amhara, where the name Amhara comes from, is isolated or was isolated when I was there. So I was in Addis Ababa. I wanted to drive into Amhara region, which is an hour drive away, and I can't. I wanted to go see the churches of Lalibela, and I can't. I wanted to go to Gondar, where there's still a Jewish community that I want to visit. Can't go there. The only way to go is to fly in. Literally, you have to fly in. Can't drive in. So what I decided to do, I decided, okay, maybe I'll do that later. I'm going to take the bus, I heard, and you have to kind of go around, right? So let's say that this is where the monastery is that you saw in the video, and this is where Addis is. You can't go in a direct line. You have to kind of go around like that. Yeah? Because you have to drive around the conflict zone that you can't pass through. And I made that video, which is on my YouTube channel. It's called She Saved Me, Nightmare Bus Journey Through Ethiopia's War Zone. That took me like 4 days of buses or something, and I went through something like 15 checkpoints. I don't remember how many checkpoints
Wow.
anymore. I went through like 15, at least 15. It might have been 20. There was a checkpoint because it's a conflict zone. It was just going through checkpoints all the time, taking the bus where they say, okay, ride's over, we can't continue because the army's blocked it off or something like that. And everywhere along the way, you see these soldiers and so forth. So that was a
So
journey
at
in itself.
these checkpoints, what are they?
Yeah.
Are they like going through your bag and everything? Like, are they looking for certain people? Are they stopping certain people? What are they looking for? Like weapons and things like that? What happens at these checkpoints? And also
Well,
with all your camera gear, did they say anything to you about it?
it's an interesting question. I don't have all the answers because, first of all, a lot of people that don't speak the language, so I couldn't always understand everything that was going on. I can say from my experience that at the checkpoints, they were primarily looking through people's documents, meaning looking through their IDs, just to make sure that they're not some type of, I don't know, maybe some underground fighter or whatever. So you would very often get out of the little mini bus that we were in, these vans. It's like not a proper bus. They go through everybody's IDs. With me, they usually wouldn't ask for my ID. As soon as they saw that I'm like a foreigner. So it's just like, okay, like that's not what we're looking for. And luckily for me that I never got, there's other places around the world where you're going through these zones, you can start getting harassed. With me, it was like, okay, they just took a look at me. Maybe they asked for my passport and that's it. So they never rummaged through my stuff. I also made sure not to film, which is very important. The number one way as a vlogger to get into trouble is to try to film military or checkpoints or policemen or anything of that sort. So I was very careful not to do that, which of course harmed the vlog. It would have been cooler if I could film some military stuff, but I just thought it wasn't worth the risk to do that. So I just had my camera in my bag. They didn't really like rummage through my bag. And in that sense, the checkpoints went pretty smoothly. I mean, it was a big delay all the time, but there wasn't any point where they really started rummaging through and going through and kind of like getting into those tense moments. But it was a lot to go through, a lot of delays and and it took me to places where, yeah, you don't see many foreigners. You certainly don't see a person like me over there. When I went to Desi was the city on the way. I found a hotel there, and then I was sitting in a coffee shop, and all of a sudden I see like a massive military parade going through, like armed units and the thing, and there were people out in the street with some type of protest. Wasn't even sure which side they're on. I have to rewatch my own video to remember, but it was
So you were kind of just
near the zone.
things were happening while you were right there, and you're just kind of adapting and adjusting to it, I guess.
Yeah, look, you wanna. It's a thing. It's tempting as a blogger because you want to get great content, and a
Yeah.
lot of time, great content means taking risks, and that's why people love on YouTube those big risk takers, right? Who go into these zones, because it's cool content that other people aren't making, but you can get into trouble. So you have to kind of balance that of how do I film something interesting in a unique zone, but not get myself into trouble. So I took some pictures from far away, like of that military parade and stuff, but I didn't go down there and start filming because then they could have gone off the car and say, "What the F are you doing here?" and start, arresting me or whatever. Like, so, it's all about risk versus reward, and you got to look after yourself. I mean, I've had other close shaves in other places that I can talk about. But yeah,
Yeah, like I'm sure you've seen many different type of conflicts, civil wars throughout Africa, throughout South America, because I know you've been to many South American countries. But more recently, you're currently kind of in a conflict at this point. Can you tell us more about what is going on with the Israel-Iran situation? I know the media tells us one thing. People who live there might say something different. But you've been there for how long? Have you been there since your last trip? From your
yeah. So
previous trip?
I've been in Israel now since I came back from my Africa swing, which included Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda. So been here now. It's like 4 months, something like that, maybe a bit less. So I've been here for quite a while. And as far as what's going on with the conflict, this is a long running conflict. I would say regarding Iran that a lot of people don't know that Iran used to be one of Israel's biggest allies in this region, meaning up until 1979, Iran was ruled by someone called the Shah, which is a type of a monarch, like a king, kind of, if you may call it that. A Shah is like a Persian word for a monarch, and that monarch was pro-American and pro-Israeli. We used to buy our oil from them, from Iran, so we had no problem with them, and they had no problem with us. Also, we have a lot of Jews here in Israel who are Iranian Jews, so Persian Jews, as we call them, who speak Farsi and whatever. My cousin, she's married to someone who was born in Iran, here in Israel. So we have that link as well. But also, I think we love, I personally love the Iranian people. I've met a lot of Iranian expats abroad. They're some of the nicest people that exist. They have a really ancient, amazing history. A lot of people, when you talk about how to make cultural connection, is that back in the Bible, we're talking about the Cyrus the Great issued a declaration allowing the Jews to go back to Jerusalem after they've been exiled. So it's kind of like our relationship with them goes back thousands of years, the Jewish people and the Persians and the Iranians. So I have nothing personal against them. I love them very much. But unfortunately, what happened was that in 1979, they had a revolution there to replace this monarch. And it was a revolution that involved several different factions, like some leftist and communist factions, socialist, a bunch of them. And one of those factions was an Islamist faction, a Shia Muslim Islamist faction led by an Ayatollah, which is a type of religious leader whose name was Khomeini. And after they overthrew this monarch, he basically consolidated power and became a dictator, which is kind of like something that we see a lot in places around the world where there's a revolution and then the revolution, there's a new form of a dictator. But this dictator also had a fundamentalist doctrine that he took with him. And that's why Iran today, you see the morality police, right, where they arrest women for not wearing the head cover and things like that. That's something that came into play after this revolution. Beforehand, you can see a picture of Iran in the 1970s. You'll see women in skirts, in high heels. Like it wasn't
I heard,
this.
yeah, I heard that Iran was kind of like a tourist kind of place that people used to
Of
go
course,
back in the days. It was like, they had a beach, they had everything. Like it was like it looked like a Western civilization. And I guess everything changed after 79.
it did change in a big way internally for them, and it changed for us in Israel because this new leader basically decided that he has a new doctrine, which is also that he wants to spread the Shia Islam, right? Because Muslims are they're the two main sectarian groups in Islam are Shia and Sunni. And Iran, for example, is Shia, and most of the Arab states that surround Israel, for example, are Sunni, like Saudi Arabia, the Palestinians, Jordan are Sunni. So they also embarked on this kind of operation to try to spread their militias, their Shia Muslim militias, in these areas that had mixed Sunni Shia populations, places like Iraq, now in Yemen and Lebanon, things like that. And they also decided that Israel is their enemy and Israel needs to be destroyed, basically. I mean, they've said many times in indirect ways, but also in just completely direct ways that we're going to annihilate Israel one day, you know? Israel is the small Satan, US is the big Satan, things like that. They made us enemies, I would say, because before 79, we were not enemies. This new doctrine came in, this new ideology, we became enemies. And since then, we've been fighting a proxy war for decades. Meaning
And
a
do you
proxy
think the
war.
Iranian people like this current leader, or would they prefer to go back to the previous type of leadership before 79?
So that's a question that's constantly asked. I mean, I would say that most, and a lot of the knowledge I'm giving you now is that when I worked as a journalist, I was covering Iran a lot. I mean, Iran was always in the news. Nuclear talks this, proxy wars this, things like that. My assessment would be that it's around a third of the people who support the regime, maybe a little bit more. So pretty clearly, the majority don't support them. But there's a limit what you can do because there've been a lot of protests in the past, and then you shut the protests down, you arrest some people, you kill some people, whatever, and the people can't rise up in any way against their regime. But as far as the war now that's happening is we had decades of proxy war. So these Shia proxies in the region that were funded and armed and directed by Iran, we were in a war with them, Israel. So Hezbollah in Lebanon, we were fighting them. Yeah, we had a big war with them back in 2006. We had a big war with them now. Hamas is also in many ways linked to Iran, and they get from them support and things like that we've been fighting. So we were fighting them via like proxy, similar kind of like Cold War. Think a little bit about the Cold War, where the US and Russia weren't fighting directly, but they were fighting proxy wars, sort of. So we were fighting their proxies. But what happened now after the recent war we had in Gaza with Hamas is that the war became a direct war. So in last year, they fired for the first time missiles directly at Israel from Iran. So they didn't fire them from Lebanon via a proxy. They fired directly from Iran at us. And now we, for the first time, fired directly at them, yeah, to try to take out their nuclear program and their military leadership. So that's a change in the war that we had, that it's become a direct war now
So
with
it's not
very
a
high stakes.
proxy as it was before. This is a
Yeah.
direct
Exactly.
interaction.
And now now after we attacked their nuclear program and some of their scientists and military leadership, they have been firing huge barrages of ballistic missiles, mostly at civilian populations here. And these ballistic missiles are quite deadly. So if rockets that we were getting from Gaza or from whatever are dangerous, but not as dangerous. These ones, like we had a bunch of people were killed, like 12 people were killed in the past couple of days, and pictures where you see buildings literally taking massive damage, half collapsing, not completely collapsing, but like this is a type of rocket attack we haven't seen in Israel, with all the things that we've been through, because they have a powerful military with real big ballistic missiles, and that's why I used to have rocket attacks here where you hear a warning siren, and it sometimes could be even enough. Because the bomb shelter is at the bottom of the building, and it can take some time and everything to go into the stair room, because the stair room is in the middle of the building, so that's like a protected place. Now, because the missiles are coming from Iran, so it's far away, we have like a little bit earlier warning, and everyone is going down to the actual like bunker that we have here in the building, which is
Similar to what you
where we
just did.
started. Exactly, exactly. And we're lucky that we have a bunker in the building, because if you go to really old buildings, they don't have one. You have to go out into the neighborhood somewhere to find one of these bunkers. On the other hand, if you have a really new apartment, then you'll have a bunker in your house. So one of the rooms in the way it's a mandated structure in Israel. You want to build a building, every room, every apartment has to have a safe room. A
Oh,
safe
so
room.
it's a mandatory built into every building moving forward, like all the
New
modern
ones,
buildings.
newer ones. Yeah, you
Yeah.
have a so one of the kids' bedroom is a bunker. It's made out of solid, much more heavy, solid concrete with a solid in-thing door, and then you have a safe room in your apartment. So you don't. It's much more accessible.
Well,
So
see,
that's the
the amazing thing is because you do have a experience in history as a journalist and now you are a travel vlogger, you probably can see and interview and document things that not every news media can. Because if you think about it, for example, let's just say CNN. If CNN wanted to go somewhere, they need to get this pass, this license, this visa. They have to go through all this paperwork before they can even step in, whereas you can just, as a civilian, you have your camera phone right there, boom, start documenting. Do you have a responsibility to do that because you have these opportunities that maybe other news media does not? Like, do you feel the pressure and responsibility of, okay, you know what, I should start documenting from my perspective?
Are we talking about in Israel or in other countries?
Yeah, in Israel. So the whole Israel Iran thing, like I know you're currently in a bunker and I know you've been there for 4 months now. Have you been documenting what's been happening, like just on your own, not posting it on YouTube, but just for your own self?
It's an interesting question. I actually, I had this question of what I'm doing with my channel, as far as, because I had this tension between doing the kind of more geopolitical stuff, especially in regard to Israel, and the more travel stuff. You know, so I'm still like, I've always had that question mark in my mind of how to, like, what direction I want to take the channel. I had a type of aversion early on from doing things that are too conflicty, because I'd done that. I worked in the news, covered conflict endlessly, and then I was like, okay, I built a very interesting, unique travel channel, and I don't want to turn it into another one of these
Like an
political
independent
channels.
journalistic kind of thing.
Yeah, well, look, yeah, I mean, most of the people who are doing this are not really doing journalism. They're mostly talking in
Mm,
front of the camera and giving their perspective, their opinion and perspective. Kind of like I just did to you now. I explained to you the history of Iran,
yeah.
from my perspective, that maybe they don't tell you so much in the media. Like now, there are a lot of people online. They're saying Israel's starting a war with Iran, as if they didn't fire rockets at us a year ago, or haven't been, initiated a state of hostility against us for 40 plus years and pursuing nuclear program and things like that. But again, that's just talking into the camera. And I had a certain aversion against potentially being a talker too much, right? Because we have a lot of talkers. We have a lot of talkers in a lot of big heads who go on camera and they talk and talk and talk, and they don't do, and they don't go. And I actually, some of my very successful videos that I made from in Israel were not so political. It was just showing day-to-day stuff, showing real stuff. And that's actually something that we don't have enough of. We don't have enough videos of just showing, like, I went into some of these very religious neighborhoods that most people don't know anything about, including myself, because I'm not a Jew with a big black hat and black, what we call ultra-Orthodox Jews that you have also in the US. Also inside Israel, that community is very different than the community I grew up in, and I don't know a lot about how they live. Going into Arab areas in Israel, where there's Arab Muslim population, Bedouin Muslim population, made videos of those guys as well. So I actually kind of feel like there's more interesting, more valuable content to create in Israel by not touching too much on those direct conflict and political stuff that everybody's talking about endlessly on Twitter. The problem is that it's not as profitable, right?
And you know what? You're absolutely right with that because I actually got into your channel when I was watching the travel parts. It was relaxing. I was learning something. I was seeing something different. I was seeing a new group of people, a new way of life. And I think you're absolutely right because currently we're being bombarded from every news channel about the negatives. Sometimes if you want to get away from the negative, they can tune into channels like yours to kind of get the other side of Israel or the other side of this country, you know, the people, the food, the culture, the history. And I think you are at a crossroads where you got to figure out if you're going this way or that way. And I think with every YouTuber and any influencer or anybody doing social media, I think we all go through this at one point. But I think you will definitely do it in a good way because I've seen the Israel ones as well. And there's a lot of people that I didn't know lived in Israel. It's so multicultural and so diverse. And then you also go to places where, you know, many people don't see Israelis, you know, that you go to an Arab place and we see the other side of the Arab people. But I think you're definitely on the right track with that. So my last point to the Israel-Iran conflict, where do you see this going? You've been a journalist for many, many years. You've been covering this for many years. Unlike, you know, the average person who's probably just saw it on the television channel, is there going to be a World War III? I guess that's the main question. Where do you think this is going to happen? Are other countries going to get involved? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, I mean, I'm not a prophet, so I don't know where everything's going to go. But I think to calm people down, is I don't think there's going to be a World War III. Um, I do very much hope the war ends with Iran not being a nuclear power. I think that, but not just because they directly threaten Israel, but because it would start a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, and it would give an umbrella to these proxy militias that they have throughout the Middle East. So I think it would just be a very destabilizing, dangerous thing in the hands of the current regime. So if the war can end with, for example, a negotiated settlement that actually takes apart or seriously limits the nuclear program, which is something that Trump has been trying to do, President Trump, with the Iranians and the negotiations. And maybe this hit that they took makes them understand that they're not going to get anything better than what's kind of being offered to them. You know, so if either Israel militarily destroys that nuclear program or they have to dismantle it because of the situation that they're in, the losing situation that they're in on the ground, that would be a very good way to end the war, meaning ending the war in a way that doesn't ensure that there's another war. The other option is that the government in Iran falls. We're already hearing reports of planes flying out with some of the personnel. A lot of top military commanders have been killed. And as I mentioned, the regime is not popular internally in Iran. There's more people who are against it than for it. So if somehow the regime falls and Iran gets a new government or leadership, or the Shah, the monarch, comes back, because people have been talking about that, right? So the monarch, who was in 79, his kid is living in the US now. Reza Pahlavi, his name is, and there's some people who say, bring the Shah back. We want to go back to what was, you know? Something like that. So either the nuclear program is destroyed militarily, or they sign a deal that makes them, that a strong deal, though, not like a meek, weak deal like Obama signed, which kind of doesn't really stop them from continuing the program, but a proper deal that stops them, or the regime falls. All those options would be, from my perspective, I think, amazing for the entire Middle East. Would help bring stability in the Middle East. Ending the war, where basically the military program is pretty much intact. There's no mechanisms in play to stop them from rebuilding it. I think is just, they're just going to go back to doing what they're doing, which is arming up proxies like Hezbollah, like others, and continuing to try to build a nuclear bomb, and nothing has been resolved. And this is a tough thing for people to hear, because, you know, it's people don't like war. I don't like war. People like the idea that everyone in the world is benevolent, right? Especially in the US, there's a big isolationist wave that's going on, in the sense that it's not our problem, whatever. And I understand that, and I'm not saying the U.S. needs to get bogged down in 20 years like it did in Iraq, or even get involved at all. You know, maybe I think Israel can do it by itself. I just think that it's worth noting that things that happen around the world do impact a lot of places, not least the U.S. and others. And I think Iran, under its current format, is not good for Israel, the US, or the moderate Arab countries that are in the region. So I hope we see a change in that, and that would be amazing. And I just want to stress again that I've met a lot of Iranians when I've been traveling abroad, mostly expats, and they tend to be the people who are more kind of like liberal and people who are more critical of the regime. That's why they're not in Iran. And I had nothing but positive interactions. So when I said I'm from Israel, they're Iran, there was no problem. We got along great. I had great discussions with them. They're extremely friendly people. They're an ancient people with an amazing history going back thousands of years. I have nothing against them whatsoever. It's the number one country I want to visit as a vlogger is Iran. It's my dream to visit there. And, the only way it's going to happen is if this regime falls. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. And if it does, I'm the first one to go on a plane and to vlog from Iran, and not a political vlog. Just show the history, the culture, the people. It's my dream. So it's really, I love them. I really love them as a people, and I'm wishing them all the best, But unfortunately, our peoples are destined to be enemies under their current regime. So if that changes, then a lot will change.
Yep, and what you said is absolutely correct, because I've talked to a lot of Iranians as well, and they have the same sentiment. They don't like the current regime. They want their freedom back. The way that their great grandparents lived instead of how they're living now. Iran's oil, because right now Iran and Israel are having this massive conflict. Oil prices are up and down, up and down. What are your thoughts about that? I'm not too fluent in that area of what happens with the oil market, but if you can just let us know.
Yeah, so this is not financial advice. Let's start with that. Disclaimer, so I don't get sued. But look, there's going to be some rocking of oil prices. I think I saw after the attack that the oil prices kind of spiked and then they went back down. But there is a big danger or possibility of the Iranians maybe closing the Straits of Hormuz, or maybe the Americans or the Israelis. I don't know. But that Straits of Hormuz, that's the small waterway that is between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. And a ton of the world oil flows through there, either from the Iranian oil or the oil from the Arab countries. Very often has to go through that strait. And then also when it goes around the Arabian Peninsula and makes its way through the Suez Canal, where a ton of the shipping of the world goes through that lane, also you have the Houthis, which is a proxy of Iran, that are harassing ships over there and could do so more now because of the attack. That also influences how the oil flows basically everywhere. So I think we're in possibly for a fluctuation in oil prices that could be more or less depending how the war unfolds. There's another important player here, which is Russia. Russia is allied I don't know if allied, but yeah, they're pretty tight with Iran. For example, when in the war between Russia and Ukraine, the Iranians sold drones to Russia that it used in that war over there. So they have a pretty good relationship, but actually Russia might actually have an interest here in seeing Iran get hit, because then their oil prices will go up and they'll make a big profit off of that. So definitely the oil supply in the Middle East, and also from Russia now, we can see fluctuations in that can have a big impact maybe on the market. And that's probably something that maybe people should kind of pay attention to see if there's any fluctuations in that. It's something that's happened historically. Just a fact that I want to share, because I love history and we talked a lot about history here, was that in the 1973 war between Israel and the Arab countries, between Israel, Egypt, and Syria, Saudi Arabia launched an oil boycott against countries that had agreed to allow arms shipments to pass through their territory to get to Israel. And that caused a 400-degree spike in oil prices for a short period of time, rocked the oil markets all around the globe, and created a seismic something that lasted for over a year, I think. So it had a massive impact back in the day. I don't know if that's what's going to happen here, but definitely if there's one area of the global economy that could be impacted by all of this, it's oil prices.
And I think you're absolutely correct, because that little narrow strip of water where the Suez and the Hormuz Canal are, that is the gateway to Europe, Africa, the United States, instead of going all the way around the planet. And I think with the proxy militants, the Houthis and whoever else is in that area, if they're disrupting that, logistics, it will not only affect oil, but it can also affect goods that are coming in from China, goods that are coming in from other locations as well. So I think we're headed for a market fluctuation in many sectors, but oil is definitely the top tier because it is summertime. People are trying to travel. There'll be more flights, more rails, more people driving. And I think this is going to be detrimental, especially to the Western societies, where people are trying to travel and vacation right now. So thank you for that honest opinion about the oil situation, because we don't really hear about the Suez or the Hormuz Canal these days in where I am, but I'm sure where you are, it's a hot topic. And that's a good way of looking at it. So investors, watch those oil stocks. If it drops, hey, it could be a good time to buy in, but again, it's a high risk.
Yeah, very, very high risk, but we're going to see a fluctuation for sure. So just keep your eyes open for that.
Yep, and it's similar to the Russia-Ukraine. When that war started, oil
Yeah.
prices were all over the place. And now we got another oil, juggernaut that's under fire. So oil prices will definitely be all over the place. And of course, when these wars are done, prices and markets go right back up. So this could be, maybe not financial advice, but a good buying opportunity. And so with this conflict that's currently happening, I just hope that it ends sooner than later, because you don't know what's in their thoughts. As you said, people are leaving, their high, personnel are leaving. So that's just going to leave the people to kind of fend for themselves. And what is the inside word on Gaza? Are they going to slowly, I guess, retreat and focus on Iran? Are they gonna have two battles happening at the same time? Because we don't get that news over here. So is there anything that they're saying in Israel about that?
Um, well, insofar as how the war in Iran impacts that, it's kind of, I think, flown a bit under the radar. Like everyone's been focusing on Iran the last few days because the Gaza thing has been going on for a long time. So it's kind of been pushed a little bit aside on the news agenda inside Israel at the moment. Obviously, it will come back. Um, and look, Gaza is complicated. The militia that controls Gaza, Hamas, is also an Iranian proxy. So they're funded and supported by Iran. So it will be a question of how they'll be impacted by this. I think the Israeli position has been pretty consistently since the war, since they launched that attack on October 7th, 2023, where they came into Israel and they killed all those people and they filmed it on their GoPros, like travel vloggers in a bad way. They were filming everything they were doing and uploading. And they have our people hostage there as well, still, that they're holding, that they kidnapped. So, of course, to bring back those people who were kidnapped, but also, again, like the same problem as in Iran is that, yeah, I want the war to end, obviously, and I don't want anyone to be harmed who shouldn't be harmed. But I also understand that if that regime there that's in control, or this if Hamas is in control and they just retake power of that entire territory, then they're going to attack us again, or divert their resources to fire rockets at us again. Like I'll just tell a story again. It's the thing about this is there's history, and it's a lot to unpack that you can't really unpack just on a news bulletin. In 2005, Israel had a military presence in Gaza, and then it withdrew out of Gaza, and it took out any civilians that it had, Jewish Israeli civilians, and left it to them. And they had two factions there, which was Hamas, which a lot of people have heard of probably in the news and stuff, and Fatah, which was another one, the main one of the Palestinians. And Hamas, they won an election with like 60% or something, so it wasn't an absolute win, and then they just killed off or destroyed the opposition and became an absolute power in Gaza. And as soon as they did that, they started to fire an increasing amount of rockets at Israel. This was back in 2006-7. I was in the military. 2007, I was conscripted into the military, 2007, which is mandatory here. And I was in my basic training in 2007, and we were talking to some of our sergeants or lieutenants or whatever officers about what we can expect during our service, because they had been in the Second Lebanon War. That was 2006. That was before I was a soldier. They had been in the Second Lebanon War, which was a war with one of these Iranian proxies, Hezbollah. So it was a proxy. It was a war with the Iranian proxy, not direct war like now, which is what we talked about earlier, but with the proxy that's in Lebanon on our border. And we asked, okay, you were in a war with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Are we going to be in a war? Us, the younger recruits. And he said, yeah, of course, with Gaza. Because until then, we didn't have this war with Hamas, with Gaza. Because they were, when I was in basic training, basically the rockets were increasing all the time. So at the beginning, they only fired at these border communities. And then they started firing at Ashkelon and Ashdod, which are these southern cities. And then they started firing at Beersheba. And they were already firing like at Tel Aviv. So they were firing more and more and longer and longer. So everyone understood that, okay, at some point we're going to have to invade, right? We're going to have to go in and smash up the rocket launchers and the capability, which we did. But then we left. So what happened? They rebuilt, and then it happened again. And then the next time, which was one was in 2009, the next one was 2012. So this time Israel only bombed them with the Air Force, these rocket capabilities and whatever. And there was a ceasefire, and then it happened again. So it's kind of like, that's what I want to avoid, right? Like, I don't, it's all, I don't, I don't want to be in that situation at all. But it's a lot of the time what the international community is pushing for is a quick fix. Something that it's just going to reignite somewhere down the road, because it doesn't actually deal with the fundamental problem.
Because it's like you destroy one, it comes back. You destroy it. It's pretty much just going back and forth. And I'm guessing the game plan this time around is no more going back. It's let's just get rid of them right now. And I'm guessing with this whole Iran conflict, if you get rid of this this current administration, that's going to remove all these proxy militants, I guess, right?
That's definitely the hope. And I would say quite realistic, because these proxies can't really have that much, let's say, wind in their sails if they don't have a strong, capable Iran at their back. I mean, they are, in the end of the day, proxies. They are inside territories where there are other forces at play. So, for example, in Lebanon, you have Hezbollah, but there's also other populations. There's Christians in Lebanon. There's Sunni Muslims who are not. So there's other populations. So in order for them to have that, they can't just by themselves create this enclave and strength inside Lebanon if they don't have the backing of Iran. It would be a very different ballgame. The whole region would change fundamentally if this regime in Iran were out of the picture. There would still be a lot of problems, and but a lot of things would change. A lot of things would change, I would say, for the good. And yeah, I mean, it comes from ideology a lot. It's something that we don't like to talk about so much. But in the end of the day, these forces have an ideology that guides them, which is why it's very hard to think of just kind of, signing some type of deal and then things will change 180% if the ideology remains the same. So same with Gaza, right? There's a group there, Hamas. They have a founding charter, which is their founding document. It's like a declaration of independence of the US. And it says, we're going to destroy Israel. Just point blank. That's what it says. It says, and then it uses all this religious language, right? We're going to wage jihad and we're going to kill them. And that's the ideology that's currently in control there. So,
as some of the greatest writers in the past have said, right? The most dangerous weapon is the tongue, right? So it's like whatever you speak out, whatever your ideology is, whatever you pass down. And I think that's something that's been happening with not only the Jewish people, the Arab people, but I think a lot of cultures, a lot of their issues come from ideologies that might have been maybe coerced, changed by a certain group of people to fit a certain agenda. And I think me, the average person, we just kind of get our information from whatever we're told. But people like you who not only studied this on the ground floor, right on the front lines, you have a much better understanding. And that's why this geopolitical talk that you just gave me and my viewers, I think this is absolutely amazing. We are definitely going to have you back on, Alec. So now let's just take a little pivot to something a little bit more lighter. But what is one thing or maybe two things that you wish people knew about you behind the camera? Like, what kind of a person are you? Like you did tell us a little bit before, but what is something that, the average person or average friend may or may not know?
It's a good question. I don't know exactly what the perception of me is through the camera necessarily, right? Because I know me as me. Like I don't know the persona me through the like someone who just views me through the camera, what he thinks of me, I don't know, right? So it's hard for me to say what they think of me and what would be true of me that they don't know, you know? Um, so yeah, I mean, I would say, it's interesting because in a lot of ways I'm kind of introverted, boring person sometimes, which is not the impression you get when I go to all these crazy places and I'm interacting with people and I'm being kind of more extroverted. And I think I have like bursts of that. But in the end of the day, I'm not a cocktail party type of person. I'm not the type of person that is, I go into a room and I like dominate the room or something with my charisma or whatever. I'm not the type of person who's always when I'm in Israel, I'm always out and I'm always doing things. Like a lot of time, I'm just in my apartment and I'm watching Netflix and stuff like that. So I think I think it comes out of me like in bursts. I definitely have that element of my personality. Also, when I worked as a journalist, right, where you have to talk to people and when you're
Yeah.
interviewing people in the studios and things like that. So, but I think maybe I don't know if that's what comes out sort of in the camera that I'm always on the move and always on adventure and always in the talking to people and stuff. I think that's kind of not really who I am a lot of the time.
But it is
And
needed to be entertaining, to, capture the audience's attention. So I think you're on the right track with that.
like I said, I have it in bursts, and if I didn't have it in bursts, I wouldn't have a channel, right? If I didn't have that side of me, it would never work. So I have it in bursts, but I would say more often than that, I prefer to just kind of like chill by myself. So I think that's something that maybe people wouldn't know about me, you know? Yeah.
No, that is good because on camera, personally, I always thought you were like extroverted, ready to go, down this,
Yeah.
alleyway in the middle of the dark, like just you're out there, adventurous, risk taker. But it's good to know that you're also on the other side of being more calm, more of an indoorsy person. But since you've traveled almost everywhere that everybody would love to go to, what is your new definition of success? Do you think success is the same definition as before your journey? Because out here in the Western world, cars, houses, jewelry, money, that's, I guess, a definition of success. But because you've seen so many different type of people, cultures, ups and downs, what is your definition of success?
Yeah, I mean, when you see a lot of different places, it's interesting because it makes you think about what your life could have been if in some alternative universe you'd been born in the slum in Kenya, which I visited. And it's like, yeah, it makes you think. It does it's a weird sensation kind of where a lot of people, they grow up in a certain part of the world and they spend almost their entire life there or in that vicinity, and that's kind of all they know. And it also makes you not overthink things because you just don't have too much to compare to and you just live your life. When you see so many places, it can be confusing because you see so many different things and it's kind of like, okay, what am I? What or whatever. I don't know.
Like, how do I fit in this world or stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly. Because now you have what you went through in your most of your life to compare to 50 different other things. I remember when I was in South America where they were just, go in the city and there's music blaring until 2 a.m. Literally every day. People are just living every day. Their economy isn't doing that great over there in Colombia, but they're certainly living it up, and it kind of makes you
It's like
think that
YOLO, you only live once.
it makes you think. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of in the momentness in South America, which is not it's not the greatest for financial stuff because financial success is about being boring. It's a lot about saving and thinking and planning. And a lot of people there are not doing that stuff. But on the other hand, they're in the moment all the time, and that's a tremendous thing. And it's why South America is addictive for so many people. They absolutely love it. So that also makes you kind of think of what success is because we're obsessed with success of having. I definitely, when I started the vlog, I love the idea of building something that's mine. So it's not about how much money I make or what I buy. I've never been a materialistic person. I don't have. I traveled. One thing you need to know about my travels, I did it all with a 30-liter, which is basically kind of almost like a school backpack, like a carry-on luggage, right? Not carry-on luggage, hand luggage. Sorry, my whole world trip with hand luggage, meaning a
Wow.
bag. It's not even a trolley, just a small bag so I could get the cheap flights and not have
Kind
to
of like
pay
a duffel
extra.
bag, right?
No, so it's not even there. There's a suitcase that you check in at the flight, and then there's a little trolley, which is hand luggage, and then there's just your handbag, which is just like a small backpack that I kind of
Ah,
made it. So I wasn't paying anything extra. I was paying like the base fare of the low cost airlines to save money, and also just to make my life easier when I'm moving place to place. And that's what I had. So I had 4 shirts, I had some underwear, socks, and that's it. My laptop, my can like I had nothing. It was so basic and it simplified my life so much. So in like materialistic, I never viewed that as a form of success. It took a lot of stress off of me knowing I have so few things on me. Like this is all you have, like can fit into this basically on you. So there's no room to buy anything. You don't go next to a shop and think, oh, I want to buy these new pair of sneakers. No, no, no. There's no room for that. One pair of shoes I had on me all the time. So that's definitely not success. I would say concerning building up your own business, I think there's something very, very driving about that can sustain you your whole life, right? So you got your YouTube channel, and that's like your dream, and you're pushing that forward, and to see that grow, and maybe go into other platforms like Insta and start getting sponsors and stuff. That's a big thing, right? Like that's very motivating and driving. And
it's
I
very
definitely think
independent too. You're not, you're your own boss. You make your own hours. Your effort and motivation makes or breaks you, right? If you're that motivated person, go getter, you'll be successful. If you're in your ownership,
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, for sure, what you're saying is true. The question is that, like, what is the avenue you're pursuing, right? I mean, you could be a lawyer and you're moving up in the law firm or whatever. You can be a YouTube channel and you're building your channel like this. You could be. There's like a lot of. You can work in high tech, which is a very big sector in Israel that makes a lot of money, where you just go up in a higher position, making more money, but you're still like inside part of a system, like you said. So I don't know. You asked the question. I don't have the answer. I mean, I would say 2 years ago for sure when I started the vlog, I wanted to have a big successful vlog. So this idea of having something that I own, it's mine. I work for myself, right? And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's become successful. Not just about the money, but just that it gets the viewers and it changes people's perception and lives, and it has an impact. That was like for me success. But now I'm not so sure anymore because now it's like, okay, I did all that. I did a ton of traveling, and now I kind of, I don't know if
try something else.
well, I just don't know if I see myself going into all these crazy places, and even if it got me a lot of views because you're on your own in those travels. So I think
Yeah.
it's just rounded. You need to be rounded. You got to have your family and your kids maybe, and your job and your.
Well,
It's
if
like
you
a
do go
balance of.
down the geopolitical route, I think that'll be a cool step as well. If you want to go down that path, because you're very knowledgeable, and your knowledge of not only Israel but other issues in that kind of part of the world from your journalistic experience as well. I think you can give it a very refreshing perspective.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. I mean, there are a lot of commentators on these issues. I'm certainly not the only one. But the thing is that you were exposed to me because you weren't consuming that content, right? You weren't the person who's going into Twitter and consuming these analysts of Israel, Palestine, Israel, Iran stuff. You were like you got to me through something else, through the travel thing. So I kind of feel like a lot of the time maybe I can get to people in a more unique way, actually, by doing some of the other stuff. Like particularly in Israel, those videos of just showing different communities here and life here. So it's
Yeah,
kind
because we don't get
of
that. I really enjoyed just learning more about Israel, what's happening, the people, the food, the culture, the history, without any of the
yeah.
politics of it. I thought it was really, really cool because you don't really get to see these insides of certain places in the world.
Yeah, for sure. I think also, look, this was something cool also that the vloggers brought to the world in general, is that it gave us that kind of very real feel of these places that we didn't know anything about in the past. Even if there were some news reports or you could watch a documentary on National Geographic or whatever, it's not the same. You know, now you have from all these places, and I think if you're in the US now and all of a sudden a vlogger gives you a vlog from Syria, from you know, like, and with people and
Yeah.
this and a mosque and the women and the food, and it's like a mind blow, you know. All of a sudden you're seeing this place from up close. You're seeing real people. You're seeing their real struggles. You see that countries that you might think of also as an enemy in some way, and that's certainly relevant to me. You still see that the people are people, and you see a lot of it's a very humanizing, can be, to see the other side just in a regular way, you know, in a regular way. And that's why I'm so happy also that I traveled to some of these places and saw it with my own eyes, not through someone else's vlog. I made the vlog, you
Yeah.
know? So,
You've showed the humanity of those individuals. And so if someone wanted to become a travel vlogger or even just a YouTuber in general, what type of advice would you give them, especially with the burnout? Because I know, you know, us YouTubers, we're working, whether we're filming or editing or doing something or planning something. What advice would you give to a new vlogger? And can you also talk about the burnout? Because I know that's something that a lot of people don't speak about.
burnout is a problem. Uh, I actually did a live stream called Burnout back when I was in Africa. I was in Kenya, and you know, it was a bit of a pivot after doing a bunch of videos in Israel to go to Africa all of a sudden. And I think particularly in Kenya, I actually lost some viewers. Like, so some people got disinterested, and I was working hard and punching out a lot of videos and not getting too many views. And then I had to take this one of these small vans to go somewhere. And you know, I had a bit of space to sit, and everything seemed okay. And all of a sudden, this big fat guy came and sat next to me and squeezed me into this little space. And the road was bad, and the thing was bumping. And I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm by myself in Kenya, like squeezed here in this terrible road journey, and I'm barely surviving on. You know, I'm getting like 2,000 views on my videos, whatever. It was like a real low point for me. And I
You
told
were like
myself in that,
contemplating, is this even worth it?
but I told myself in that moment, remember this moment, because you know, just remember it, and it's going to be okay. Like, remember this down. This is, you're at your low here, and from here you're going to have an up, and you're going to look back and laugh at it. I told myself that, and now that's exactly what I'm doing. So is it? I mean, I just think that you should have a goal of making your life a bit easier by maybe like getting an editor or getting some software that helps you or whatever it is. Like, you should look at ways of taking off the burden of the monotonous, non-enjoyable parts of your job as a YouTuber. I mean, I think that should be something to look forward to. Obviously, at the beginning, you can't do that because you don't have the size or the funds. But I think being able to look forward to that is a possibility of something that can help you with the burnout, that somebody's helping you do things. I think doing other things in life, like don't take your don't take it too seriously. You know, I mean, you need to take it seriously for it to succeed, but just remember, there's still life. Do your exercise, meet with friends, go out, party, whatever. If you're a family, spend time with your family. Like, don't attach your entirety of yourself to the success of the YouTube channel, especially with the waves of the views. And I'm still struggling with this, and I still make this mistake. You know, I get too attached to, like, oh, am I succeeding or not? Like, you gotta take things in proportion, and just understand, you as a person is not defined entirely by how many views you get on YouTube. Just remember that. You know, so that's another thing with the burnout. And And yeah, and also just, it's okay to take a break. I mean, you can take a break for a week or two. Like, don't. That's also always a possibility. So just if you are being burnt out too much, if you're feeling burnt out, then you are, and take care of yourself, and it's okay, and the world will wait, and the viewers will wait.
You know what, Alec? That was amazing advice because that's the same thing I always tell people who want to get started into social media or YouTubing or anything like this is there is real burnout. If you have a brand sponsorship, you're meeting deadlines. If you have to put this out to not disappoint your audience, you have to do it. There's a lot of late nights, a lot of technical difficulties, and it is really, really irritating. So Alec, you have given us some amazing, amazing, not only wisdom, insights, but also the geopolitical talks, the inspiration for you to start travel vlogging, the opportunities that you had growing up and currently has really given not only me, but my audience a new perspective. And all your information will be in the description box. However, before we conclude this interview, do you have any last mentions, any significant events coming up? What is next for the Insightful Nomad?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm right now, after all that travel, I'm going to be spending more time in Israel. So I'm going to be doing some vlogs from Israel. I've been trying out some of the more geopolitical content. So my latest video is kind of like an explainer about the Middle East and how to unpack the Middle East. So I think that's something that could be relevant. Also, my live streams, I tend to just answer people's questions. So if you have any question, you can just go into whenever I do a live stream, you can just go in and type a question. There's a good chance I'll answer it for you. And I'll be talking about the latest events. I'm also writing a book. I'm writing a book probably called Visiting the Enemy, and then like underneath in smaller letters, an Israeli blogger's journey in the Arab and Muslim world, which is going to be a lot about my travels in the places that really kind of made my channel, which was Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Morocco. These are countries that are traditionally not considered exactly friends of Israel, some to a more degree, some less, some more from the people, some from the leadership, some both. And it includes a lot of the stuff that is actually on film in my vlog. So it's true because you can just check the video and see that it happened. There's video evidence. But it will also include some behind the scenes things that don't appear in the videos, interactions I had when the camera wasn't rolling, my concerns, my stuff, and kind of what was going through my head, and also a bit of kind of the conclusions I reached regarding our relations, Israel, with these countries, which are not always positive, but sometimes more, sometimes less. So it kind of has like several different aspects to it, this book which is kind of, you get to learn about the countries and the history and everything, which I splash in, my own personal experience, the type of people I met, and then kind of my conclusions from that whole experience. All of that is going to be in the book. It's probably going to take a bit more time, maybe, well, I don't know. I've never written a book before, so we'll see. But it's coming along well. So that's something to look forward to in the future. But meanwhile, you can just hop into the channel, watch the videos, and come into the live stream and ask any question you want to ask. And I'm there for you guys.
I absolutely love that. And you know what? We're definitely going to keep in touch. So when that book drops, I will definitely be a buyer. So Alec, honestly, thank you so much for being here with me today. I know you're in such a unique situation right now, and thankfully you're safe and away from, the main things that's going on. You have definitely filled my channel with some really, really good information and wisdom today. Audience, I will have all of Alec's information in the description box, including his website, his Instagram, his Patreon. I'll have all of that stuff in the description box. Please check him out. He is definitely changing the game when it comes to travel vlogging. I started with one episode that just came on my timeline, and I pretty much ended up watching all of his catalog, and here we are now talking, and totally worth it. So so what do you guys do now? Do you guys just kind of stay in the bunker area, or is there like another alarm that says, okay, things are clear? What is the protocol?
Yeah, so basically we have something here called a red alert siren that we've had for years, which is when a rocket is incoming, you hear this siren. It goes off in the neighborhood. There are sirens all throughout the country. And then these sirens were mostly for years, 4 rockets coming either from Lebanon, from the Hezbollah proxy of Iran, or from the south, from Hamas, another proxy of Iran. so this is what we're fighting. That's what I'm saying. We're fighting the proxies. And then it depends how far away you are. So, for example, you have these border communities next to Gaza that they have 15 seconds to run to a bomb shelter. 15, 1-5. So it's very, very intense when you're down there. And I've been down there during war times where you see people rushing. But if you're in Tel Aviv, or where I am here in the town next to Tel Aviv, you have 2 minutes if it's coming from Gaza. So you can kind of more leisurely walk to your shelter, right? You don't have to like run because it's taking longer. You have to go all the way through Israel to get there. You're not, so then there's the cities that are, it's 45 seconds you have, or 1 minute, like it depends where you are. Now, because the ballistic missiles are coming out of Iran, and we have some forewarning based on, I don't know what systems exactly. So you get this big alert on your phone. It says, it starts ringing like that. And then it says, start improving your position towards the bunker or wherever you are. And then a couple minutes later, the siren comes, you know? So that's when I told you, remember I said in the message, I said, it looks like we're gonna have to go to bunker. I got that preliminary message.
Yeah.
And I said, let's wait, let's see. And then like a couple minutes later, I got the siren. So I went, and then I went down to the bunker after that happened. But the thing is that, we have a longer warning period now than we usually have. So there's plenty of time to get into one of these shelters in the current situation. And people are like much more serious about it because these rockets are the missiles are a lot more serious than the other ones. Where it's a few, and it's sometimes, and it's not always that.
And usually intercepted.
A lot of them are intercepted by our air defense system, and it got less and less at the beginning. When the thing broke out a year and a half ago, there were a lot of rockets coming in. But then, as our military started like smashing them really badly, because we're much more stronger than them, which is also our Achilles heel, because then all the socialists are like, oh, it's the strong versus the weak. We're on the side of the weak. So that's kind of like that's kind of our problem. So we hit them very badly, and of course a lot of people got killed as well, hurt on the other side, who are not necessarily combatants, and we have to be honest about that. And that's what we took a lot of flack for internationally, that saying we're not doing enough to protect civilians on the other side, and that's a whole story in itself. I mean, I can just say I don't take any pleasure in seeing people on the other side be harmed, but when they are firing missiles on us, it's like, okay, it's us or them. But yeah, so we're probably in the next couple of days, I think we're going to have these alarms, and then just go down to the shelter, spend some time there. We have a Wi-Fi in there, and then just you get the message saying, okay, the barrage is over, and you can go back out. Probably in the middle of the night as well. We had one in the middle of the night, which kind of disrupts your sleep. So this is a period we're going to have to go through.
Just got to be aware of what's going on and what's happening, and make sure that phone is by you, so you know what to do next.
Yeah, it's something that's going on, and we'll get through it, and it's fine, and we'll
definitely
be okay.
So Alec, please, we're gonna definitely stay in touch. You were definitely gonna be on this channel again. You're gonna update us, and looking forward to more videos and more travels. And so, audience, please like, subscribe, and until the next time, stay ranting.